Thank you for joining me on the Lunchbox. This is episode number 10. We have my good friend and special guest, Kemp, on to talk about cottage and recreational properties. So if you do have any questions you'd like to ask, just put them in the comments below. There is a slight delay between the broadcast and when I can see the comments. So excuse that little bit of a delay, but we'll get to your questions as soon as we possibly can. So we will bring Christine in here in a second. I know she's running around showing cottage properties and stuff all day, so we don't want to take up too much time. And so I will bring her in. But just was introducing you. I told everybody you are the my go-to realtor up in Peterborough and Kawartha Lakes. You've been a realtor there for quite some time, so you're very experienced, know the area extremely well, and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully we'll get into that. If we do get any questions, people put them in the comments. I've already got a few from a few people that knew you were coming, so they're already set and ready to go. But yeah, we just wanted to talk about you and see, like, what is your background in the area? I'll give you a chance to hype yourself up. I've already told people you've been in and around for a long time, and I mean that in a nice way. Past president of your local association, very involved in real estate at the national, provincial, local level, etc. for quite some time. And been practicing real estate specifically in Peterborough and the Kawartha Lakes for how many years, roughly?
25 years.
Yeah. So you've seen,
can't believe it.
helped buy and sell the same homes multiple times, I'm sure, over the years. So yeah, what is your area of expertise or focus, or, you know, like what kind of properties are available in Peterborough and Kawartha Lakes for people who don't know the area well?
Well, primarily, I'd say majority is residential and waterfront. Of course, we do, we've got a lot of condos. We have a large senior population here. We're a bedroom community for Toronto. Oldest median age demographic in the entire country by population, and that's reflected in our board membership as well. The median age of realtors here, I had a study conducted a few years ago, and the median age of realtors was 69. So that tells you a little bit about our population. So we've got a variance. We've got condos, we've got farms. There's kind of a smaller group of us that deal with farms. They can be more complex than a large commercial deal. There's a lot of facets depending on the type of farm. But the majority, of course, is definitely our waterfronts and then residential. We're still commuting distance to Toronto with good 4-lane highways all the way. So it's a nice mix here.
And again, we've been seeing that, and we talk all the time. So I know that we've had conversations about the influx of people from the Toronto area, from the Durham area, even from the Ottawa area. And we're getting the same here as people radiate out from Toronto, trying to either escape sort of urban living, or they're just been priced out. So they're looking for other places to go. And you've been experienced probably a bit longer than I have in terms of just people looking for retirement type communities, because Hamilton is not exactly a retirement place.
We've always been very, very busy, like retirement type properties. Peterborough and Lindsay are unique in the sense those are areas where a 2-bedroom bungalow is your hottest commodity typically in town. Like if you want to be in Peterborough, Lindsay, or Lakefield, Bobcaygeon, Fenelon, like those kind of little towns, they're looking for the 2-bedroom bungalow, unfinished basement, no room for the kids to ever move back home again. Those have always been a hot commodity in a lot of markets. I know a realtor, they get a call for they're listing a 2-bedroom bungalow. They're disappointed it's not a 3. Ours is the opposite. The 2 bedrooms are in higher demand, and the builders here know that, and they build to that, of course. It's and per square foot, they sell for a lot more than, like, say, a 4-bedroom, 2-story with a finished walkout basement. It's definitely, we've always had that surge, and a lot of it is people coming back. There's a lot of people like me that were born and raised here, and you go off to the city, go to school, and realize that you don't want to live there, and sometimes you get sick of commuting. I commuted for a number of years, and no, it just wasn't something that I could continue and foresee myself doing in the long term. But I also was adamant against wanting to raise my family in the city. I've always been in the country, and city life isn't for me.
No, and this is for a lot of people. And I think we see the similar kind of thing here, but not in a retirement sense and stuff. But we do have a lot of people in Hamilton because we got a fairly wide range of stuff like you do up there. Like on our outskirts, we do, I mean, on the one end, we're bordered by Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, a bit further south on the other end. But we do have a lot of farm properties and rural properties on the outside. So we do have a lot of people that do exactly what you said. They'll move closer to Toronto for a while and they'll come back to Hamilton, not necessarily for country living, because that's still a little bit difficult. Like there's not as much of that kind of property around. But they don't want something as busy as like the Toronto downtown type area, living in like a 600 square foot condo with kids or something.
We're very blessed here that in any direction, you can't drive 5-10 minutes in any direction without driving into a lake, literally. We're completely surrounded by water, parks, crown land, like there's trails. Our trail system up here is absolutely amazing. Like even out in very rural areas, these trails go on for hundreds of miles. It's a very different lifestyle here. And that's what most people, like the younger people that are coming and willing to do the commute, that's always been a driving force for them. They want to be close. They want their kids in a smaller community for hockey and, different recreation, and then for schools and things like that. And one or both parents are doing the run up 35, 115. Now with the 407 extension, 401 makes it even easier than it used to be. But we have had a larger influx. Like we've always been seniors and students. We have Trent University here. We've got Fleming College. We have the flight school. So heavy pressure on our rental market. Always our rental market is always at less than half a point availability. But since COVID, we've got more and more people, young people that still have young kids at home, young couples, 30s, like late 30s, mid 30s, that are selling down, say in Durham. We've had a lot out of Durham. They've seen their prices, their home values double in Durham in the last 5-6 years. They're selling there, coming up here and buying with either no mortgage or very little mortgage to get a comparable home, but it's only 25-30 minutes up the highway. So it's a good trade-off for a young couple to, a lot of them that I've been putting into properties, they're pretty much going in mortgage free at barely 30, 32 years old, which is a nice spot to be in with a young family. And it's the pressure though then comes when our locals can't afford to compete with those buyers coming in out of the GTA. They're coming in with bigger dollars. As much as we've seen great appreciation here since 2016, really late 2016 into 2017, we never saw the dip that Durham especially fell, but they were up 46% year over year in the spring of 2017. We were up about 27%. So when the stress test came in, it didn't have near as much impact on our market as it did on theirs. And then we continued a nice trajectory. We've always been a very conservative market. We've never had the heartbeat monitor type stats. We've always been just a nice trajectory. Keeps things a little more stable. The appraisers like it. The banks like it. The key is, the biggest change I should say is it's the number of people moving forward that aren't going back to the office. They're going to be working from home moving forward. Their employers decided they don't need the extremely expensive square footage downtown Toronto. They can have employees working remote. So we've got people coming up wanting to be on the lakes as long as they can get high-speed internet in whatever locale they're looking in. Looking at Four Seasons on the water has been massive demand. And then others that are just looking even for the most rustic of cottages. They're looking to escape. They're in a condo or a townhouse or something downtown Toronto. The parks have been closed. Everything's been shut down now for so long because they've experienced much more heavy restrictions and lockdowns than we have up here. We've been pretty open, I have to say, through COVID, unless there's a provincial lockdown, we've been pretty open, unrestricted. And I can fully appreciate as a parent why, if you had, young kids, you'd be desperate to get out of the city, get out somewhere with a backyard or on a lake or on a river or nearby, where, my daughter can go and walk the trails and we can take the dog out. And we've got things we can do here that would be very difficult in the city. And yet mom and dad could still work from home. And it's a much lower cost of living up here.
Yeah, and we've kind of experienced the same here. It's just people radiating out from Toronto. We're still a larger urban center, so we're still a bit of a hot spot in terms of COVID and everything else. But definitely, we didn't shut down anywhere near as tightly as they did in Toronto.
No.
So parks are still open and all that sort of stuff. And we've got a little bit more spread out subdivisions, a little bit of sprawl actually happening. So people are doing the same thing here in Hamilton and even out towards Niagara. So definitely we've seen the price pressures, but that's basically kind of why I wanted to touch base with you and talk about people looking for that, because the demand for cottage and recreational properties has pretty much gone through the roof. And we've been promoting and showing the RE/MAX report that came out recently about cottage and recreational across the country. So I'm going to throw it up, just a little piece of it here that we can take a look at quickly if I am somewhat decent at computer type stuff. There we go. So there's the cover of the 2021 RE/MAX Recreational Property Report. It does go national, so it talks to brokers across the country, just look at general trends. But they do some kind of bullet points from right off the top. The average sale price, they're anticipating to increase by 30% in some areas. There's still some areas, mostly outlying areas from what I could tell, that are still looking at lower prices to start with and are looking at still a lot of room for growth. 44% of recreational property buyers are budgeting between $200,000 and $500,000. Now, I don't know if that's viable in your market. I know from conversations we've had, it doesn't quite sound like it, but you would expect that in the more popular areas. Obviously, it'd be more expensive, but there are a lot of other areas people are looking at. But on top of that, another 57% of Canadian recreational markets, at least the brokers and agents in those areas, say that there are properties available in that price range. So I'm not sure where exactly those areas are.
We do have, like, just to interject quickly, like
Yeah,
you can get waterfront in this area in that price point, but it's typically going to be a leased land situation. Like we have 3 reserves in the area that I cover. We also have some private leased land, and as well some crown leased land. So there's the 3 different types that we deal with in the 5 predominant regions that we work in. Those leased land properties, you can get quite a nice cottage, you know, 250 to 300, but of course you're not buying the land, so they can't be mortgaged. You can't mortgage something you don't own. We do have different finance vehicles for people looking to get into them, and they have traditionally been a good option for like a starter type cottage for a lot of people, a lot of young families that are trying to balance, you know, having the first house, kids, but still wanting that cottage experience that they were given growing up, you know, at their parents' or grandparents' cottage sort of thing. So that's about it though for here right now, like in the areas that I cover. Under 5 is just pretty, unless you're on like a little river or somewhere pretty remote, off grid. Did sell an island in Buckhorn there, but it was like totally off grid. Couple solar panels. It's got to be pretty rough.
Here. Yeah, we've got leased land properties around here too in Flamborough and surrounding areas. And most people around here would think of them almost like trailer parks, mobile home parks. There's one version of it. But we do have like modular home communities where the bungalows dropped on actual foundations, but they are on leased land. So the price points are generally a bit lower, as you mentioned, just because you don't own the land, but then you got the extra expense of paying the lease fee, the monthly fees that go with it and stuff like that.
Now, ours are on the lakes. Our 3, like Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Alderville are all lakefront reserves. Now, they've been very protected through COVID, though. The roads in and out blocked off, but they've all been vaccinated now, both vaccines, and are starting to slowly kind of open back up. But it was an option, at least a little bit more affordable option from the actual price standpoint. But when you factor in the different finance vehicles you need to use to purchase them, they're not actually cheaper. And that's kind of the things like why I want to touch base with you too, is like you're better off using a local expert, and which is one of the questions I get Dan Young, which you both know, asked, versus using someone who's not so familiar with the areas and cities and all the extra expenses involved too, is someone who can give you that perspective as to what's going on. Because the last point that I was going to bring up here is that about 54% of these people looking to purchase recreational properties over the next year, according to the RE/MAX report, are first-time recreational property buyers. So it's a lot of people who are coming from the city, who've, like you said, maybe visited cottages when they were younger. Their parents may have owned one,
but they don't necessarily know themselves what's involved with owning a waterfront property, recreational property. You're talking about like, year-round roads versus, 3-season roads and all this other kind of stuff. What are some of the questions, I guess, that people come in that, or either questions they have or things that they really just don't consider when purchasing like a cottage property, or they should be thinking about?
Well, we've had a massive surge after Toronto brought in their new bylaws regarding short-term rentals. So we have another element of pressure on our waterfront market, aside from just the people wanting to move here, live here year-round, work here, or just escape the city. We have the investor component. The biggest misperception is that you can just buy a cottage anywhere up here and Airbnb it, or rent it out weekly with no restrictions. And it's very important. Like, you can have like 3 different townships on the same lake, and they will have very different rules. And there's several of them right now that have different bylaws currently going through committee of the whole, that if they get passed, will implement severe restrictions on the ability to do short-term rentals in those areas. That's something definitely, if that's part of your plan when you're purchasing, is that in order to be able to carry that recreational property, because a lot of people maybe want to use it 3-4 weeks themselves in the middle of the summer, peak week type stuff, and then rent it out to help with carrying costs. Taxes are higher on the water, obviously. People get a little bit of a wake-up call sometimes. Rural property does require a little bit more maintenance. Waterfront property, depending on what area you're in up here, as soon as you get kind of Buckhorn, Bob Cajun, and north, it gets very rocky. Not as much exterior maintenance as far as, a lot of grass cutting and things like that. A bit south of there, of course, because of the moisture coming off the lakes, the grass just grows like crazy, or twice a week. Like, it's just a lot more maintenance involved. And then sometimes people realize when they're coming from the city, especially, and if they don't understand the different sewage types. And again, that all plays into their financing. Same with wells, or is it on lake draw? Does it have a pyro line for heat in the winter? These are all things that are important to know as well, and knowing what their lender is going to require. There's the other misperception that they can just easily get 75 or 80% financing on any waterfront out there, and that's not the case. It's very important how the property gets presented to the broker, the underwriter, as to whether or not it gets approved. And there's certain facets in relation to flood zones, the roads, how far from the emergency stations. These are all things that need to be taken into account before people go throwing these cash offers around in this hysterical market at the moment. Super important to be very prepared. But honestly, the biggest, I don't know if you call it a disappointment, but I think it's going to be wild in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, as a lot of these spring sales are closing and people are coming up doing final walkthroughs. I think there's going to be a lot of shock. We've had, as I'm sure is happening in your market, we have so many realtors in Ontario now. And when the market is like this, I find they tend to travel a lot farther to list property because they assume it's just going to sell. So they'll take listings in areas where they normally wouldn't. All of our lakes look great here. March, April, May, they all look great. The ice just went out. It's freezing cold. Nothing's growing. They look very, very different June, July, August, September, October, when people are actually here enjoying them. And it's been quite something to watch some of the sales that have come along, and how the properties have been presented, the price they're selling for, and the expectation from that buyer that they're getting clean shoreline. And knowing the area very well, I'm born and raised here. Some of these areas are awful. They get lily pads the size of my car. They're choked right out with wild rice in the summer. It's very, very different a month from now than it is today. And it only takes like a week or two of really hot weather for the weeds to come up. It's going to get interesting when these big sales in some of these areas, when they get close to closing and they're doing their final walkthrough, and they see what they actually bought. And it's unfortunate because if they, you're talking about the importance of using someone local, that's a big part of it. I've got photos and aerial video and stuff of so many areas on our lakes from past listings that I've sold, and I can speak to the area, as can a lot of our cottage agents here. We can tell our clients, look, it looks like this now, but here's photos, here's video of what it's going to look like in June, July, August, in this area. And if, for example, a young couple, they want the kids to jump off the dock and swim and
drop a boat in the water, and
it looks very, very different beginning, in April and beginning of May, when it's typically people are looking to buy them because they all want to close them in the spring, so they have it all summer. And they may be in for a bit of a shock if they've had an agent drive up with them from, we have them come from Ottawa, from Toronto, from Sudbury, from the waterfront I just dealt with last week. I had agents from Niagara Falls, I had agents from North Bay, agents from Ottawa, from quite a ways away, bringing their buyers up here and not knowing the area. And it's very risky. It's kind of silly, to be honest. If you want to do the best job for your client, it'd be like me going downtown Toronto trying to sell someone a condo. Do I know if that building's had Kitech? No, I don't. Do I know if anything's going to be built walking the view of Lake Ontario? No, I don't. That's not my wheelhouse. It's not my area of expertise. So I try to stick to what I know to keep myself out of trouble, but to protect my clients. I don't want them. It would be the worst thing to have somebody telling you, I want this, this, and this, and then they show up and be disappointed in what they bought.
Well, even looking at locally here, you'll get people who, we've got a mix of properties here, and the very basic stuff to us is septic systems, wells. That's not uncommon here, cisterns for properties and that sort of thing. But same as you, I presume we'll get people coming in from Toronto who lived in the city, and you mention the septic system to them. I have no idea what that is. Not only that, I've seen a couple of agents from the Toronto area who have sort of been looking in the cottage country for their buyers, posting online things like, "Oh my goodness, it's a septic system. What is that?" And their mortgage people saying, "No, don't do that. It's the worst thing that you could possibly do. You never ever want that." And the thing is, no, it's fine. It's just another way that we do things. But and if you're in these outlying areas, if you're in waterfront areas, the entire country is not covered in sewer systems. The entire country's not covered in hydro lines. You're going to these remote areas or these outlying areas for a reason. And you're going to have to deal with having to maintain a septic system. Well,
sometimes people even get surprised that there isn't high-speed internet everywhere. There isn't cell service everywhere. That's why I carry two phones with me, one on different networks. And when I'm out running around all day, we've got areas that are just complete dead zones for cell service that aren't that far. These aren't super crazy way out there. It's just the trees, the rocks. You can get I shouldn't say great. You can get decent high-speed satellite internet, as Belle likes to call it, on several of our lakes. The problem is the speeds are very high in the spring, but as soon as the leaves come in on the trees, it does throttle down. And then as well, we've had so many more people using it in this past year since COVID. It's not working as well as it was. There is a huge provincial push on getting our rural areas getting more cable internet and high speed lines brought in, and thankfully that was started pre-COVID, because it has made a difference. A lot of the kids my daughter goes to school with are at Warsaw, Norwood, Buckhorn, Omemee, North Omemee, and a lot of them now do have cable internet to the property, but you get up around the lakes and these little cottage roads, they don't. The main highways, most of them are getting, Bell 5 put in or some Nexacom cable. But people don't think about it. They're so used to it being a staple where they are that they don't give it a second thought. And I sometimes have to point out to people when we're in certain parts of certain lakes, I'll say, check your cell phone. What kind of service do you have? I have this right now with Rogers. I have this with Bell at the moment. Who are you with and what kind of service are you picking up? Because a lot of them are still hotspotting from cell phones. So you can imagine the bills with kids trying to online school, parents working, and they're hotspotting off their cell phones.
Or watch a movie.
No. And then I had a lot of clients, especially through the North Forth area, got on the beta Elon Musk program for the Starlink. So it's about $6,700 for the equipment. But then once you're on, it's $128 a month, unlimited, and the signal is coming straight down from the satellite, so it doesn't seem to be being as impacted as, for example, the Bell Towers or the Eastlink or the different providers we have with towers where they're trying to go horizontal with the signal.
Sure.
And you could have great service at one house, but you go around the bay and they have nothing.
Yeah.
They have no
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
And it isn't that one of the top requests I get when people are looking for waterfront. Sure. Some people want to come up here and want to be just completely cut off from everything. You know, it sounds dreamy to me. No cell service, no internet, it'd be awesome. But typically right now, more than ever, because of the amount of work people are doing online, kids logged in for schooling, they do need decent speed. Yeah. And preferably not.
We're seeing it here too.
Yeah.
We don't even have to be as far out like as cottage country. Like just literally last night I was out showing property in West Lincoln, which is right next to me here, but it's a bit more farm or rural type area. And same, we got people coming out here thinking, okay, we'll get like a half an acre of property, which, you know, what the dollars they're getting from their Toronto homes is feasible for them to do, which a lot of, like you were saying too, a lot of people in Hamilton can't do that because they've seen the increases. But then you get out there and I literally will, same as you, pull up my phone and go like, well, I can still get internet service. How about you? Are you doing okay? Because yeah, they don't have the service. But even in the city, people don't understand. Like a friend of mine just lives on the west side of the city and I'm on the east side, and I'm in a newer subdivision. So I get Ethernet service right to my house. So my upload and download speeds are much faster than his is, even though he's also technically on cable internet. Like they're not all the same, depending where you are. And as soon as you're, like I said, you're just in farm country, basically, which is 5 minutes outside of here. I leave my area. I'm technically roaming. So if you don't have a roaming package on your cell phone, you're kind of bouncing around all over that stuff. And I've been on phone calls with you on the way back from certain areas, and you just hit a dead spot, and the call just drops because you're just in a dead zone in an area, you know, with houses and stuff all around, and it doesn't seem to be any reason why you would be in one, but you are.
Well, we've got Bridge, North Keene, like areas that are just outside Peterborough, like very close by, very, very close.
And if you're all remote working and remote schooling,
be in the car driving, you have to tell people, okay, I'm coming into here. If I drop you, I'll call you back. Because, you know, as soon as you turn the bend in the road, there's nothing feasible there. There's no hill. There's nothing that should be cutting you off, but it just is. And the same on the 115 South. 115 is south of Peterborough. There's a big dead zone at Tapley Quarter Line, unfortunately, where most of the accidents happen. There's no cell service. Go figure. But no, I just find it comes as a bit of surprise to some people when they start their search, and that's why it's important to kind of give them the info ahead of time as much as possible regarding they have an expectation that, like you said, municipal water and sewer is available, which it's not when you get in the outlying areas. They don't understand difference between a septic system and a holding tank. There's a big difference. We also have many of our townships going to starting these mandatory septic inspection programs. Well, a lot of these old cottages built in the 40s, 50s, nobody knows what's under there. Typically, it's a few steel drums that were welded together by somebody's uncle back in the day for a case of beer, and it's under the cottage, and you know, a whole bunch of interesting facets involved there.
And doesn't comply with any current
doesn't comply with anything, doesn't meet any setbacks. It
No.
might be sitting on a shore road allowance. It could be on the neighbor's property. These areas weren't, like, we were very late getting flipped over into land titles as well compared to the GTA and the large municipalities. And but in no means am I picking on Toronto agents at all. There's a lot of Toronto agents that have cottages up here and in Muskoka and other areas, and they're very well versed in wells and septics. It more boils down to just being able to know what is happening in your community. And there's a lot to stay on top of, like I said, with these different new bylaws that are coming in relation to septic inspections, Airbnb, short-term rentals. There's some interesting stuff going on in Halliburton. Troy Austin would be a good person you might want to consider having on to talk about that, where they're wanting to revert to 90 or 75% natural shoreline on their properties, on their lakefronts, to protect their lake systems. That's something I see the Kawartha is possibly looking at adopting a similar type structure. It would make sense. And as well, a big confusion with our system is people come up and they'll look at the lake and they assume because there's a lake that there's going to be tons of water in the well. Most of our lakes especially the Trent Severn, obviously, if you looked at a 120-year-old map, those weren't lakes. Many of them were creeks, rivers, and much smaller, like little tributaries. Today, they're very large lakes, our biggest lakes, actually. And but those are flooded out farmers' fields. just because you're staring at a massive body of water north and south as far as the eye can see does not mean that there's any water in the ground.
Exactly.
And there are workarounds for that, but on a 4-season year-round home, obviously you'd prefer to have a well as opposed to having a lake draw system with pyrolines on it. And of course, being in those shallower areas that used to be a farmer's field, it's more prone to weeds and such. Instead of when you get just north, that Cambrian Shield, just south the Canadian Shield, where it's very, very rocky, that brings in its own component of issues with sulfur gas, iron in the water. Very expensive to try to put septics. You've got different types of septics you need to put in those areas now that, unlike a $15,000 gravity fed system, you could be starting at a $50,000 or $55,000 peat moss or aerobic system, which are very expensive to maintain and quite ugly and smelly, but they're still better than a holding tank.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff and the frustrating part, we used to traditionally, you'd take somebody out if they like the area, okay, they like the cottage, they want to look into some things, you'd go maybe a couple of times looking at it.
Right.
And you do your offer, get your conditions in, have time, you go talk to the township. As a realtor, I'm pulling the R plan, I'm digging for surveys, I'm trying to get well and septic records or figure out who probably did the well or septic in that area and go bug them for any documents. They're not easily attainable here the way they are in the city. Like, I appreciate that in Toronto, they can go to these different websites and get all kinds of magical things. They don't exist up here. Our townships have all amalgamated into clumps over the years, and then everything got kicked up to the health unit. So the records are a complete disaster. And a well record more than a week old isn't really worth its salt anyways, except for telling you where it is in the depth. The gallons per minute, like the flow rate's not going to mean anything if there's been any changes since that well was installed.
And that's the kind of stuff you need to secure your mortgage.
Well, the issue is right now, though, as you know, like I get to these cottages, first off, Cottage Road, so there's people all over the place. People are in, there's nowhere to park. They're stacking us in 15-minute increments on showings. So you're there, your buyers are there. We can't go in the same car because of COVID. Then the people ahead of you, the people coming behind you, and then some idiot shows up early or late. So now you've got 8-10 cars on a single lane Cottage Road that has 2 parking spots. You've got vehicles all over the place, nowhere to turn around. Several of them are people not local to the area, so they're not aware of kind of the protocol of letting people by and where to park, and don't, whatever you do, pull off to the shoulder because you'll go down the rock. It gets interesting. Like, us locals all know each other. So you'll see somebody coming out, you wave, you're like, yeah, we're going to wait here. We're going to back out, let you out. We'll pull in, take your spot.
Sure.
We all work together because we know each other and we have to see each other.
Have a bit of a relationship.
Well, we have to, because if I'm offering today on someone's listing, the odds are next week they could be offering on one of mine. We don't have that anonymity that they do in the city. Like, we've had some really aggressive agents come from some faraway places, and they'll pound their way in the middle of your showing. Like, we've been so careful with COVID up here, protecting our seniors and following protocols, and our numbers are low and reflect that. And we sign all the papers just like every agent in the province. We've been signing this stuff now for 15 months. It'll be the agent, 2 buyers. We're going to Lysol, we're going to sanitize, we're not going to use the bathroom, we're not going to do anything. If you saw the craziness going up here on weekends on our cottages, it's awful. And the way that some people, they come stampeding in. And if I had one guy almost knocked a pregnant client of mine down the stairs. We had just walked in. If it was our turn, we waited in line. We finally get in. He comes bashing in, and the basement stairs were just off the side. Well, he hits her with the front door, almost sent her flying down the stairs. He had 10 people with him. There was 4 carloads of people from Toronto. It was my showing block. And his excuse that I had to let him in was he was from Toronto. I don't care if you're from Neptune, it's my showing time, get out. And the listing agent was a close friend. I called her once we got in, and I was shoving his arm out the door, like literally fighting, kicking to get the door shut and get it locked. It was so ridiculous. My poor clients are standing there watching this. But then they ran around the cottage, downstairs, upstairs. There's a walkout on the lakeside. And, people put their face like this, like up against the glass to see in because of the sun. We're trying to have a showing. We got people all over the place. And this guy's kicking the door.
I
But
only
I drove
laugh.
from Toronto. I want to see. I have to get in now.
No,
No.
it's terrible, but I only laugh because I know you. And if you told me to get out, I would get out because
Well,
I don't
it
want to
is.
deal with that.
This is very common, and actually,
And
one
it's
of
here
my
too. To be perfectly honest with you, and it is a lot of influx of outside agents, and not just from Toronto, like you said. It's a lot of agents that who just aren't familiar with the area. Because I mean, I
well,
wouldn't
but they're
really feel
acting from a
comfortable.
place of they don't care if they piss me off because they
No,
assume they're never
absolutely.
going to have to see me again. We
That
don't do
too.
that
Yeah,
to each other
absolutely.
up here because,
Hmm.
like I said, I could be offering on theirs today. They could be offering on one of mine next week.
Yeah.
If I'm an idiot to them, they're not going to give my clients a very good chance next week.
That's exactly what I tell most of my clients as well, or pretty much all of them. It's like, the HGTV version of bidding wars and stuff where people pound on the table and yell at each other and say, your house is garbage. I'm not giving you
Yeah.
this money. I was like, we don't do that because like I need them on my side. And I need to be on their side because if we are trying to buy this house and we are not successful, it's likely that this agent has another house listed that we want to maybe buy, or they have want to bring their buyers to buy your house at some point. So we
No,
need a good
we've got
working
a great
relationship.
group. There's like 850 local realtors here in Peterborough,
Mhm.
Kawartha Lakes area,
Yeah,
and
I
we've
think we're just over 3,000 now,
it
3,100.
it's predominantly an amazing group of people. Everybody's
Sure.
very respectful of each other for that exact reason. That if you might not do a deal with them today, we might do one next week.
That's what
And
we say. If you're going to be in this business or any business long term, that's kind of the way that you act, and
well, that's
that's the
how
kind of
everything gets done
relationships you build. Yeah.
in a slow market or a balanced market. The best thing you can offer your clients is your relationships. It's your
Mhm.
network.
Yeah.
That's how things get done. And
And
I
that
had a weird situation. And I don't know if you've had this happen in your market yet, and maybe we're just naive up here, but I thought this was a new twist. So on one I had a few days ago, we had 12 offers come in.
Mhm.
One of the agents who showed it was from outside the area, and he was good as far as he was calling and asking the right questions. He knew what he didn't know, which, as we all know in real estate, is
Mhm.
the first thing to know. When you recognize you're outside your depth or you don't understand or you need more information, that's the most important thing we need to learn as realtors and then go to seek that information. So this gentleman was asking very good questions, very poignant questions, protecting his clients, doing a great job. What shocked me though was come offer day, he called me up and said that he was referring his buyers to me. And I said, okay, well, I don't do that. I don't do multiple representation on my
Mm.
listings in this market. I can't wear the two hats at the same time when
Right.
there's a magnitude of offers. I need
Yeah.
to be 100% working for my sellers when I have to advise them when there's 10 offers or 5 offers, how many offers sitting on the table.
No, same. Neither do I.
I don't get into that at all. I don't. I send out any buyer inquiries. They get fed out. I don't deal with them personally, and for that reason, the seller has hired me to protect them, look after them, and represent their interest in the sale. Well, he was adamant that his thought process was that if I was representing his buyers, I was somehow going to make sure they got the house.
Oh yeah.
And
That's not new.
I almost felt like it was a prank call and like that, there's a RICO recording or something. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
I said, no, I said, it's
CVC
probably the
marketplace
worst thing
interview.
you can do because the other 8 or 9 or 10 people that aren't going to get the property and they're realtors, it's already sucks enough when you have to call them and say, I'm sorry, you didn't get the property. None of us enjoy this type of market. Nobody with any experience
No.
enjoys this type of stupid market. We like our buyers, like I was saying before, you go to have a couple showings, you do your inspections, you do your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
You make sure everything's perfect before it's firmed up and they're buying with confidence. When you've got a 15-minute showing window with people kicking on the door to get in behind you, people staring in the windows, you can't even have a private conversation. I'm trying to listen to my clients and answer their questions, and I'm eyeballing the property going, where's the septic? Where's the well? Where's the setbacks? I'm looking for the red flags that could impact them on their financing. I'm checking the pressure system. Is there sulfur in the water? There's in literally 15 minutes, and these are properties going, $2 million. You've got a very small window of time to try to recognize if there could be a problem, and then if you need to go back, try to find another slot available before offer day to get back in there. If there's no pre-inspect available, if there's no documents provided, and unfortunately, when you've got local people or people that are looking to do some leveraging on their primary residence to buy the cottage, or to finance the actual cottage up here, as opposed to doing the leveraging in the city, there's different aspects that need to be present in order for that type of financing they've pre-set up to actually go through with ease. And like I said, 15 minutes, and you're trying to show like a 1,500 square foot raised bungalow with a walkout basement on half an acre on the lake. So trying to watch for all these things, talk to them about the shoreline quality in the summer, watch for everything else. Try not to have agents throwing you down the stairs and all this kind of craziness going on. And the locals are pretty easy to spot. When we're out showing waterfront, we're typically hiking boots, running shoes. They're in the spring, or we've got our hunters on, rain boots. I do chuckle sometimes when I see agents come in out of the area and men are
Pointy
in
Gucci shoes.
They're in their loafers and leather-soled loafers or stilettos.
You've mentioned to me, like, taking ATVs out to look at properties and stuff. And
I've got one coming on that we just did. I ate about 4,000 bugs and I had a mask on.
Yeah. We've got Sarah Salinen's kicking around in the comments there too. And I know Sarah and John up in Perry Sound the other way in Georgian Bay. I mean, they fly into some listings. These guys own little plane and boats and stuff like that. And people in the city,
have all the fun tools. You have to have the CDs, the CD, but the CD boats are great for getting around shallow areas. We had a property last year where I had Kevin. It was water access only, and I had my son paddling everybody over in a rowboat, literally paddling them over, because the shoreline on the actual lake where the allowance was for them, whoever bought this property to keep their boat on shore, was a weedy spot at shore. The island part was beautiful. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old or something. I was literally nervous, and I said to my seller, like, it's great that you're offering to let us use the boat. I could drop my boat over at the marina in the same lake, no problem, just go through. It's one lock over from where it is now. I was going to bring my boat to the marina and take people that way. And she said, oh, it's easier to just cut right here. It's literally, you could throw a tennis ball from shore. Just take them over the putt. The first agent that booked, and I went through all the instructions with them, where exactly the boat was, where the right of way was from the road, where they were allowed to park, where they could come down, where they could access the boat. Like, do you have life jackets? Do you have this? Plus, we're dealing with COVID, right? So you've got to be super careful with things. He got about 20 feet out from shore, turned around, stuck, couldn't get, so from then on, we had to set it so Kevin just would go up. I told him, I said, the gym's closed. You're complaining you can't go to the gym. There's some exercise. Get up there, paddle these people across, let them look around, then paddle them back.
And then they get there and wonder why there are no sewers.
Yes, but no, like snowmobile, there's a lot of us around here that you've got to have these extra gadgets to get to these properties at different times of the year to be able to show them to buyers. You'll snowshoe into properties.
Well, saying that too, because I don't want, I know we've been here for a while. I don't want to take up too much. We could talk all day, I know, and we normally do. But I guess the other question I had, I just want to touch on quickly, because again, this is having to do with accessing these properties and stuff. So if you are living in the city and you're buying it as a recreational property, like a summertime property, what do you do for winter maintenance? Like this is some of the things that people don't maybe consider too, is like, I've seen photos of you all up there, my friends of mine over in Muskoka and all the realtors I know across the north there, with these big long rakes taking snow off your roofs, because just hoping that it won't collapse your house. And just
actually, this is really the first time it's ever happened to me in my career. I got a call from a neighbor of a property I listed and sold about 4 or 5 years ago. Called me up a few months back, February. I think it was February. We had a lot of snow this winter. We had a lot more snow up here than we have in a number of years. We have snow rakes. I have one for my property in town as well. When we get enough snow, it's just a responsible thing to pull some of it off and not let all that build up on your roof. But I had a property north of Fenland on the lake that I sold. It was my listing. And again, a city agent sold it to them. Like, we go through with our buyers up here, a list of kind of things to watch for, maintenance, where the transfer stations are for your garbage. Explain to them the need for locking up your garbage. They always ask why there's a big, who's going to steal the garbage when they see these big wooden structures at the end of the driveway. Why would somebody steal your garbage? Well, no, it's the bears and the moose and the deer and the coyotes and all of our friendly wildlife that come around. But this one, it was a neat spot, and it was an estate sale. And it was an out of area agent that sold it. He was very nice to deal with and seemed to have done a lot of his due diligence. But it was a very rocky lake and quite steep lot. And I got a call in February this year from the neighbor and wanting to know if I had contact info for the buyer. And I said, well, I can put you in touch with their agent. Let me pull the file and get that for you. I said, is there something wrong? How's things going? Because I'd met her a few times when I was up there. And they hadn't come to clear the snow load off the roof all winter, and it actually collapsed, and the back level collapsed, dropped the front level and pushed the whole thing down into the lake. And that cottage has been there since the 50s.
There you go.
But that's an extreme example of what can happen. But I would say probably 70% of the cottage roads around the area I cover are maintained year round. There's usually a farmer at the end of the road, or somebody's got a front end loader, and normally those roads are cleared before the municipal roads. It's
so that's what I was gonna say when you say they came. So like, and again, I'm not familiar with any of this myself. That's why I'm asking too. It's like, so are there people, I imagine like property manager type people that you could hire, and or is it mostly local people that just kind of get together and say, okay?
Typically they get together and form, like there's formal associations here that are actually corporations in some of our larger areas, or more built up areas, water access areas, stuff like that. But typically what you'll find on a small seasonal cottage road that's not maintained by the municipality, they do a grading. So
these are
in the
unassumed
spring.
Roads, right?
Unassumed roads, yeah. So you need to do a grade in the spring. The frost comes out, you got to let everything dry. The road's a bit pitty and bumpy. Now, sadly, and that's been another major problem, and I'm sure if you talk to people like Sarah and John, they find the same things happened up in their area. With the chaos this spring with these waterfront listings, these roads are just getting destroyed. There's been some agents been fined. Some agents have voluntarily gone back and made a payment and saying, listen, I'm so sorry. We had 400 cars down your road when there's already weight restrictions on it. The road, it's not a good time of year to use the road. And you get this chaos with all these showings. So, but no, most common is somebody on the road kind of takes the helm, gets everybody together. Okay, it's going to be X dollars to have it graded in the spring. And then snow plowing is typically, they try to average it. Like some years, it might be a loss if you were trying to structure a per plow situation. Other years you're coming out ahead. Last year, anybody that was on a flat rate did very well because we had a lot of snow. But I found 99% of the time, it's the guy at the end of the road. He's got a construction company, he's got front end loader, the farmer nearby, he's got a big tractor with a front end. And those roads are done way earlier, typically, than the township roads. It's usually an informal association, can range from $100 a year to $1,000 a year, depending like how far in, how big the road is, how much maintenance it's going to require. Is it in a watershed floodplain area where it really gets washed out all to hell in the spring? It needs a lot of gravel brought in. So there's a lot of factors there, but the access is super important from an emergency services standpoint, and therefore your insurance. We've got areas just to the north of us where these big watershed areas, they're floodplains, and it's only in the spring when we have the big snow load melt runoff. The cottages, you can go look at a beautiful cottage, high and dry, no signs of any water damage, but you got to pay attention to the road coming in. And this is something a lot of people miss. The road coming from the highway, you're dipping down around. The directions are like, turn left at the yellow fence post and go up, turn over the tree root and go down. You're up and down, up and down. Well, some of these roadways actually flood in the spring. So you might have, and the locals know this, and they take off to Florida for March. The problem lies in getting insurance, because the insurer is going to consider the unit a complete loss in the event of even the smallest type of fire, because emergency services can't get in all year round. So your insurance premiums are going to be much higher. Some areas it's getting more difficult to get insurance on those types of properties. And also, how far is the closest fire hall? And the big one, is it employees or is it volunteer? And what services do they provide? If you're on waterfront, how close are you to marine rescue and those type of things? We've got amazing services up here, but it is out in cottage country, it's 90% volunteers. And so there's additional time for the volunteers to get to the fire hall, get whatever rescue they need, whether it's water or fire, and then get to the property. So there's that extra element. They're not all sleeping at the fire hall or hanging out at the fire hall waiting for a call. They have to get there from their properties. And that's where you see the green flashing lights. I post every single year about this because it just boils my blood when I see these typically pickups flying down the highway with their green flashing lights and people don't know to get out of their way.
Right.
That is somebody responding to medical, fire, water emergency. They have to get, exactly, they have to, it's a volunteer responder trying to get to the fire hall to get the emergency equipment, gear, trucks, whatever they need to then respond to that emergency. And when people don't know to get out of their way, it's very frustrating. The province, I think, needs to do a better job with, and the municipalities, we need big signage on our highways. Coming up the 115, coming up 35, big signs. You see a green light, safely try to get out of their way. They don't have the same rights as police, ambulance vehicles with the flashing lights where you could get fined for not pulling over. But for heaven's sakes, there's a reason that person is trying to get to the fire hall to get emergency, because they respond to every medical call as well. And they're usually first on the scene. We've got a big county here, 3 to 4 ambulances on the road at any given time covering a massive territory. You're much more likely that the fire hall 6 kilometers away is going to reply or respond before the ambulance.
And that's the same here. And I guess, again, that's just unfamiliarity with the area, because if you're in like downtown Toronto or Etobicoke or Mississauga, that's not the kind of thing that you see. But even here in Hamilton, I'm just in Bimbrook at the southeast corner, and I'm literally a 10-minute drive away from the big Walmart supercenter, and our fire hall is primarily volunteer. So in this area, we've got the green flashing lights as well, and we're just sort of on the border of farmland and city, but we're not that far out, and we're still got volunteers and stuff there. But again, and septics and all these other things that we've been talking about in the Niagara region, like because you mentioned Airbnb, the same thing has happened, because in the Niagara Falls area, because I've had some investors asking me the same questions, they've banned Airbnb completely to protect the hotel industry. So people who've bought investment properties already and are waiting to close or are thinking about buying them, similar as, again, restrictions are sort of popping up all over the place. They're just finding out now that you could lease them out as a rental, like regular year-long lease or whatever, but weekend Airbnb type stuff is just off the table. And
well, the majority of the people that I've found coming my way looking to get into the weekly or short-term rental with the cottages are people that have sold off or are selling off or getting out of the long-term rental game because of the backlog at the LTB, because things have been so mishandled and such an absolute, they were a gong show for ages, but since COVID, it's been just beyond ridiculous. It's bankrupting people left and right. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for landlords, not good for tenants. And sadly, at the end of the day, it's just going to result in more and more private landlords completely getting out of long-term rental, and there's going to be a massive shortage. There's going to be a choice of crappy corporate rentals full of bed bugs and government housing with a 10-year wait list. For small private landlords that were saving for their retirement and stuff, in self-employed people that have been the most hit during this whole COVID thing, they're done. They're fed up. If they've got a tenant who's been abusing the property, not paying rent now for 12 months, they're done. They're fed up. They want to get out of that and get into short-term rental because the RTA doesn't apply. That's one of the biggest factors for them of still having an investment vehicle for their future and for their retirement or their kids' education, whatever they're saving for, and trying to avoid that. But like you can be on the same lake, one road over, but you're a different township now, and the rules are completely different. So it's super important. I just want to mention, though, I don't know if this is in your area yet. It's just new here, and maybe I'm very naive and not thinking you have it yet. I don't know. But because we have such rural area, and typically the directions, like we have a lot of fire routes now, which are great. You've got, fire route 14C, fire route 12B. Right. The problem is every township has those. So if you get somebody who isn't overly familiar with the area, or even someone who is in a panic situation, picture at night on a snowmobile four-wheeler going through the ice on a lake. It's dark, they're panicked, disoriented, and they're trying to describe to 911 operator where they are. And already the directions into some of these properties, like I said, like go through the gate, over the, around the hill, down the bend, turn at the whatever little landmark, the sign on the tree with their name burnt in the wood. We have this app up here now that's been adopted by all of our first responders, and it's the What 3 Words app.
Okay.
Are you guys using this yet?
I have not seen that, no.
So it's called, let me show the icon. So it's what 3 words. It's a
Okay.
red and white icon.
Mhm.
And what happens is you tap on that. And even if you know you're going into an area without cell service, say you're going to a cottage that doesn't have cell service,
Right.
you can look up that location ahead of time and get the 3 words. Every 9 square feet
Mhm.
in Canada, I think it's most of North America now, they're doing the whole world with it, but it has its own distinctive 3-word combination of where you are.
Okay.
So if you phoned up 911, and this just happened on Little Bald Lake, we had some people go through in some side-by-sides and 4-wheelers very late in the spring. It was,
Mhm.
again, just people that didn't know the area, didn't realize just because there's a lot of snow there doesn't mean the ice underneath it's thick.
Right.
Thankfully, everyone was saved, bad hypothermia and all that. But quite honestly, that area, very remote, very difficult for first responders in the dark, trying to access a lake that was currently breaking up with ice chunks, like, they couldn't access it easily on any type of vehicle. And even trying to figure out where the people were on the lake. They utilized the What 3 Words app, and they were immediately found. And that's what saved them. It was very quick, fire rescue, everybody was in there, got them airlifted out, and everybody survived. And it's very, if you're coming up this way, both Kawartha Lakes, city of Kawartha Lakes, which is the old Victoria County, that's kind of Lindsay, Bobcage, and Fenland kind of area. And then Peterborough County, where is actually the majority of the actual Kawartha Lakes is in Peterborough County. But both sets of systems are now working with this What 3 Words app. So download it, it's free, put it on your phone. And if you're not sure if the area you're going to is going to have cell service, you can look up ahead of time on the address and get the 3 words. It's going to put it really darn close. So if you were at that cottage, had an emergency, or you were in the lake, or somebody needed help, that is going to give first responders a super, super pinpoint idea of where you are compared to the old, we're on the north shore of whatever lake. And they're out there with, trying to find you in the dark, and quite often not quickly enough.
Yeah, we don't have as many areas like that, but we definitely do have a lot of unassumed roads and a lot of that stuff sort of southeast of the city, getting into like going towards Fort Erie and that sort of stuff. There's a big swath there that's really not built up at all. So you can definitely get into these little side roads and stuff like that are just, like you say, just have somebody's wooden sign hanging on it or something like that.
Well, and all our trails, people really utilize our trail systems here. They're amazing. They're huge. They're very big. And then, of course, they go through all the parks, like the petroglyphs and at Warsaw Caves. And if people aren't familiar with the area and get into these locations, and a lot of times here, when you call 911, you might get dispatched at a Barrie, which isn't nearby. So an operator
that happens right here. Like I said, my mother was living in an apartment building just on the edge of Binbrook, and the fire alarm went off in the building, so everybody evacuated the building, and she was conscientious enough to actually call 911 and see what was going on because nobody was showing up. But because where the cell towers are located, she got bumped to some place really far away. And she's trying to explain to them where Binbrook was, and that didn't work. They had no idea. And meanwhile, the fire hall, literally, she could have walked there. It's like 10 minutes down the road, and they had no idea.
Well, that's when it gets frustrating, when they keep changing the names of some of our major arterial roads. You can tell people that, like myself, that have been here forever, we call these major roads by a certain name, but the signage has changed and changed as the townships continue to amalgamate and over and over and join in with more. And then it becomes, the road names keep changing. So in a panic, when you're calling in to say, I just saw a car accident on 28. Well, I'm referring to south of Fowler's Corners to 115. Meanwhile, the new 28 is the other side heading north off 7 north towards Stony. They're miles apart. But that's another place where this app is going to be a major change. I'm actually really excited about it because we do have a lot of instances on our lakes here. Snowmobilers in the winter, people in the summer fishing, boating, children getting into trouble in the water. It's going to make a world of difference, and I'm hoping it'll be reflected in help with insurance.
Sarah wants to know what it's called again. You said 3 word?
What 3? It's the what, and then the number 3, and then words.
What 3 words?
So let me see if I can hold it up close enough. It's the red one in the middle.
Yeah, all one word says what 3, number 3 word. Cool. No, and like I said, south of here, we do get the same thing when you get to the more rural areas. Like you'll get these little towns that, depending on, and again, it depends on if you're looking on Google Maps or a different map, a GPS thing, or you're looking on the land registry, or you're looking somewhere else. It might be called Fisherville. It might be called Simcoe. It might be called whatever else it's been named over the years. And your address is, and in Hamilton, because we amalgamated all the surrounding communities like 15, 20 years ago at this point, technically it's all Hamilton, but there's Flamborough and Stony Creek and Dundas and Ancaster, and everybody still calls them by those names. And you can put that on your letters when you mail them, as long as you got the postal code right. Yeah. But technically it's all Hamilton, but it does cause confusion.
Is hilarious up here. Like you'll see on our listings, actually, there'll be for address or for directions. So there'll be directions that, someone local is going to understand. And then it'll say, for Google Maps, enter this address, which is totally different than the address of the property. But it's because Google Maps will take you on a complete, Google Maps has names for some of these little areas here, which are literally like a 4-way stop with a and at a business gas station, but they've got a name for it. So people will call up and they'll say, I'm asking about your property in such and such. You're like, where the hell's that? And it's,
well, it's happened to me right here in Binbrook. Like I said, I'm literally 10 minutes from the big Walmart supercenter, down that Rymel Road. But for some reason, when you enter some of the local addresses here, when I've listed property here, it takes them that way, 10 minutes away, and puts the pin in. I'm like, no, just turn left and come straight up the road. You're fine. You'll find it.
And actually, last year was great with no traffic on the roads to have people following you.
Oh, yeah.
When you're out on showings. This year, it was pretty hard. Last weekend, a long weekend, it was pretty hard to believe we were under a stay-at-home order. It was everything was backed up. All our routes were backed up as normal. It was kind of creepy last year. I was driving through Fenland on the long weekend, and there was nobody. I was waiting for dinosaurs or zombies or some crap. It was so weird. And this year, though, it's back to busy. Nothing's open, but there's people going everywhere, and I think people are just fed up and they
just want to get out and stuff and get out and look around.
Key thing, wherever you're looking, there's I refer people into Halliburton. I refer to Muskoka. I don't ever try to venture into these areas. It's not a matter of just a lake is a lake. There's different things to know about all of these lakes. Some are stocked, some aren't. Some have shore road allowances, some don't.
And
these are things you can. I'm not interested in taking someone into an area I don't know like the back of my hand. I want to be able to talk intelligently about depth of the aquifers, whether a drilled well might be a good idea, whether it be a waste of money, what kind of systems are available to make it
lake just talking about neighborhoods. Like I could drive up to Peterborough and I could find a residential home on a little street somewhere in Peterborough, and it's similar to a bungalow that I'd see here in Hamilton, but I have no knowledge of like the neighborhood and what it's like, what the schools are like just regular, pretty basic stuff like that.
And we've got GE that was been here 120 years in the middle of town. So they're closed up now, with acres and acres of contaminated land all around. And now they're making uranium pellets there right across from the school. There was a property recently. I had a colleague call me out of the city and say, what do you think? I was looking at this listing, like looking at a first property for their kid to buy. And it was backing onto one of the worst rooming houses in town. This place, they might as well just make it a subsidiary of the police station. They're there all the time. It's just problematic, a lot of drugs, a lot of issues. So it's backing onto this place, which has been a problem since I was a teenager. It was well known long before I was a teen. And then across the road, there's people protesting every day because they're making uranium pellets, and the soil has already been contaminated with every sort of nastiness man could contrive in the last 120 years. So they're looking at this going, it looks like an awesome deal. It's a great price. It's like,
well, none of that's in the listing information.
No, and when you go look at it on a sunny Tuesday morning, it looks very different than on a Friday night around 11:30 to between 11:30 and 4 a.m. It's a very different story. And even like some of our downtown areas, even though it's beautiful here, both Lindsay and Peterborough are beautiful, very spread out compared to the city. Nice parks everywhere, lakes, rivers, canals all over the place, golf courses everywhere. That's all great, but yes, there still are some maybe less than desirable spots. And we have I get calls from agents all the time, and their kids are coming up to go to Trent, Mr. Sanford, to buy a house for their kid to live in, and they rent the other rooms to some friends, some other students. good idea, great idea. That a lot of my family's done that. One of my little brothers just had done that 12 years ago, and they just actually moved this week to their new property. But they did very well by going that route. Had a safe place to live. They were living for free, and it worked out well. And then put a lot of elbow grease, a lot of work in, and realized the appreciation on that hard work that they did. So that's another kind of avenue of people that we have constantly influxing into our market. But yeah, our average prices are up substantially since COVID. Now, it has been a direct correlation though with rates. And this is something I find a little bit interesting. I appreciate we're going to see the stress test qualifier jump on June 1st to 525. But to me, in my mind, anything in that range is still free money. My first mortgage was, like 18%. I remember writing it down, locking it in at 11. And did I lose you?
No, you're here. I just threw up this one. This came from the recreational report too, and it shows you sort of the change in the average price anyways. So in Peterborough, Kawartha Lake, specifically the waterfront since 2019, so 2-year gauge has jumped about 70%. And you're looking at non-waterfront jumping about 55%. Just over the last few years. So it shows you the demand for properties in the area. And we're not quite 70% here in Hamilton, but we're probably closer to what you're seeing in Muskoka and Prince Edward County there.
Your prices are definitely higher than ours for a comparable property in town, like excluding the waterfront component. For in town, I can't see you at all. Where'd you go?
I'm sharing my screen. No, like I think we're pretty close. Like our average has jumped. Definitely, it is bouncing around all over the place, but we're about 750, and where this report says you're closer to just under 700.
We bounced just over 7. We were over 7 for a month, and then
it depends on the month. It's always up and down.
Just went down a little bit, about 690.
So we're about 750 to 770, depending on.
That's not including waterfront though. The waterfronts are way up, and of course that varies so much region to region, lake to lake, township to township, and the types of restrictions, the types of services available, and the quality of frontage, and whether or not you're on the Trent or not, stock lakes or not, a million different variables. But there's lots of if anybody has any questions or anything. Or
I was going to say, we've been here just over an hour, which is a long lunch break, but so if people do want to get in touch with you, what is the easiest, best way to find you?
Well, online. I messaged me just online.
Kemp.ca is one.
Yeah.
That's the website. And then email Christine at ckemp.ca.
Yep.
Good one. Anything else? What Christine sells Peterborough on Instagram?
On Instagram, yeah.
I know all your stuff better than you do. What's next? I don't know. You tell me.
You're the geeky one.
I am.
I'm
the only way.
I'm just the Friends champion.
I was going to say you are the winner of our first Friends trivia night that we had last week. So Sarah's there. She was one of the runner-ups. We are going to do it again as apropos because they just had the Friends reunion last night on.
And I missed it. I was working.
I saw bits of it. It seemed like it was fun. Might watch it later, kind of thing. And we might do another trivia thing. So we'll see. But we do like to end this one, and I'm kind of springing this on you because I should have mentioned it before, to like give a shout out to like a local business or something that you really like, that you think should get some extra attention, whether they sell stuff online, whether it's just like a local restaurant or something like that. Give 1, 2, 3, whatever places that, if you're ever up in Peterborough, here's who you should stop in and see.
We have so many amazing locally owned restaurants. I really like to support, and we've always, for client dinners and fancy dinners out, or gift cards for clients on closing, we have a lot of our farm to table restaurants where literally everything is sourced local, right from the meat, the veggies, everything. Menu changes all year. We have Rare on Brock Street. We have Amendella's on Water Street. The owner there is an absolute gem. She is just a sweetheart. And then just last week, really big news for anybody that knows this area. The Northies have sold Chemong Lodge in Bridgenorth. They've been running it now since the 60s, I believe. Doug's retired and has sold it to the Brown family. So AJ, who's been running Dr. J's, him and his brother Adson are now taking over Chemong Lodge. They just had an opening this weekend. It was, of course, a drive-by takeout thing. But this place is on the shore of Chemong Lake. It's an absolute institution around here. It's been around a whole lot longer than I've been alive. But it's the place everybody goes for prime rib on Sundays, fish on Fridays, and you couldn't ask for a nicer group of people. Both the Northies that just retired were awesome people. It's a huge place, big. When it's not COVID, it's wide open patio, huge patios, live music all the time. That whole kind of cottagey vibe. You can boat in, dock, walk over. But if you're heading through Bridgenorth on the way to the cottage, you can go to their Facebook page, Chemong Lodge, and you can pre-order, and they'll have all your brisket or whatever you want to have, ribs, chicken, and have it all packed and sealed for you to take with you to the cottage. And then you can do your own, like heat it up when you get there and stuff. But that's one I wanted to definitely promote. But we have so many. There's Bob Cajun has so many awesome patios. Everywhere does. Sorry, you sprung it on me, but so my mind's wrong. But Chemong Lodge is an institution anybody's going to know that ever has been to the Kawarthas, and that has new ownership right now, and by very experienced restaurant family, very experienced restaurant.
Cool. And I'll just mention to everybody watching that we're both Children's Miracle Network supporters. You are a champion agent like me for Motorcycle for Miracles. And as I mentioned in sort of the promotional type stuff, you're one of the top contributors to Sick Kids in the Remax network, period, which is amazing as well. I appreciate you doing that, and I'm sure everybody else does too. So yeah, if you are working with either Christine or myself to buy or sell a property, we make donations to your local children's hospital every time we help someone find their new home or sell their old home, that sort of thing. So that's amazing. And we've been doing that for many, many years, even long before we were with Remax and that sort of thing. We love to support our local children. We know we both have 2 children, and they've both been through the systems for, at Sick Kids and or here McMaster Children's Hospital in Hamilton. So we both, and we've had long discussions before, really appreciate the staff there and all the amazing things that they do. For
absolutely amazing. And I want to thank Bruce Johnson for getting us into other avenues of being able to support, in addition to just the normal donations that we make. Bruce and his family have come up with such creative ways to raise money, and it's been a real honor to be able to be a part of those things that he's done. It's been amazing to watch. The journey's been incredible.
Yeah, we talk about them all the time, so you can always look up Motorcycle single for miracles plural.com, and you can check them out. And like we talk about, mention him as many times as we possibly can. We've been fortunate enough to be like sort of the, I don't know what you want to call it. We are the champion agents, and Bruce likes to call us. Like gives us the call to kind of get things started and then support them along the way. And the 3 different journeys that they've done, incredible long journeys across Canada, from Wasaga to Costa Rica, and from Tuctayac to the southernmost tip of Argentina. And they've raised over, I believe at this point, it's over $600,000 total for Sick Kids Hospital and Children's Miracle. And again, anybody else who's donated, I mean, they primarily are focused on the Alyssa Ray Johnson Fund at Sick Kids, which is in memory of their daughter. But other people have donated, and it goes to your local children's hospital in Canada, the US. So they've just, as sort of a web spreading out from what they've done, definitely responsible for inspiring countless thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, in donations to children's hospitals. So good friends of ours, amazing people, part of the Remax network, and they're at Wasaga as well. So if you need them, check them out too. But I appreciate you jumping on. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And maybe we'll wrap around again, and we'll just we'll do a group chat of like real funny realtor stories one day or something, because I'm sure we've got plenty. So thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Later.
Take care.
And that was my good friend and colleague, Christine Kemp from Peterborough and the Kawartha Lakes with Remax Rouge. You can give her a call. Check her out at ckemp, so that's short for Christine Kemp, .ca. All her contact information is there. Or email her, christine@ckemp.ca, or check her out on Instagram at Christine Sells Peterborough. There's always some interesting photos. Like, she does amazing jobs for her listings out there with custom drone photography over the lakes and everything out there. It's just beautiful to look at. If you're looking to buy a property, obviously contact her, because she obviously knows everything that you need to know if you're moving to that area. So I do appreciate y'all coming in. I know it's been a longer edition, but there was a lot to talk about. So like I always tell you, I love you all. I really do. And until next time, thanks for tuning in to The Lunchbox.